We're in Albany today with the Albany Fire Chief, Derek Mays, and Lieutenant John Catino from the Albany Fire Department. Appreciate your cooperation today, and we're going to talk about fire extinguishers. So, Chief, I understand you're a fire extinguisher instructor, and so let's just go over a few of the common types of fire extinguishers that we see here.
Sure, Jason. The first type we have here is an ABC. It's a common 10-pound extinguisher that you'd find. It's a dry chemical extinguisher. You've got a CO2 extinguisher next to it and a water extinguisher next to that.
So when you say ABC, I know we hear that term occasionally and we'll see those on the packaging in stores. What does the ABC mean?
ABC is a rating of what the fire extinguisher is designed to put out. A being common combustibles, B being your liquids or your greases, and C being a charged electrical.
So let me ask you this: A being common combustibles, does that mean like wood and paper or those types of things?
That is correct.
So okay, common combustibles would be any type of household items, things you find in your garage.
That is correct.
Okay, so the B then, you say chemicals and liquids. Give me an
Correct.
Example of that?
Grease itself. It's really good for grease type fires.
What about gasoline or oil?
Very effective.
Okay, good. And then we talk about the C type. Now that's electrical. What is, when you say an electrical fire, what do you mean by that?
If you had a fire in your wall outlet or something like that that was an actually energized electrical fire, you could use that to put out the fire without risk of being shocked, and it's effective at putting that out.
Oh, so you actually spray this on the electricity source itself, and you're not in any danger.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, so then so that's probably the most typical kind of fire extinguisher we find?
Yeah, it is very much the most common one that you'd see.
Okay, and that's something that you would maybe want to have in your home?
Absolutely. That would be the type that you'd want.
Okay. Now, the kind next to that, you said CO2. Describe that to me.
CO2, or carbon dioxide, is a cooling agent. You would use it on a B-type fire or a C-type fire. And A-type fires it can put out, but it has a tendency to spread the common combustibles, especially if it's paper or lightweight materials, around when it's discharged.
Oh, okay. So that's under high pressure?
That is correct.
All right. And then the silver fire extinguisher here, what kind of fire extinguisher is that?
That is a water-type extinguisher, and it was used for an A-type fire, common combustible, but is not to be used on grease-type fires.
What happens if you use it on grease
fire?
fire?
It will increase the fire intensity and will actually spread it.
Okay. All right. So I understand all these fire extinguishers, they appear to be the same type of mechanism on top. Is there a common way to use all these fire extinguishers?
Yes, there is, Jason. When it is used by a common acronym, it's PASS. It means pull, which you pull the pin, then you aim, squeeze the trigger, and sweep.
So Lieutenant Catino here is going to demonstrate that for us. So you're just pulling the pin. Is that fairly easy to do?
That's correct.
And then how much pressure does it take to actually compress that valve at the top?
Very little, very little. Aim, squeeze, and sweep.
So pressurized water, is that refillable?
Correct. And it's just water refilled, and you can use an air compressor to recharge that.
So you can just keep using that one over and over
Correct.
again. Okay. And how about your ABC type and your CO2 type fire extinguishers?
Yes, both these type are refillable. With a gauge on them, you can tell the gauge. It's very important if you have a fire extinguisher to check the gauge and make sure it is in the green, it is where it is properly supposed to be. The type that do not have the gauge of the dry chemical, the ABC type, once you use them, they are finished. But the type that you see here can be refilled and used over.
Now I see a lot of those type without the gauge in stores and in big chain stores, and they're a little less expensive.
Correct.
And why is that?
They are not refillable. They're one shot and done. So once you use them, they're over. And they are good to have, especially in your vehicle or car.
I see a lot of those in like boats, and you see those real small ones.
Correct. They're required by law to be on every boat. But once you use those, they are not to be refilled. They're not to be put back and try to be reused again. They are done.
Okay, so that's why they're less expensive.
Correct.
So these would be a better purchase for the long term, is what you're telling me.
Correct. You could have these refilled at for these that would be at Corson's in Muncie or an applicable place. We'll refill your extinguishers.
Okay, and what do you know the cost on that?
It's very inexpensive to have those refilled.
Okay, and what size fire extinguisher do you want to have in your home?
I would recommend a 10-pound dry chemical. It's the most common and most effective.
Now, is that a 10-pound fire extinguisher, or is that 10 pounds of chemical?
That's your chemical rating.
So when you say you have a 20-pound dry chem or ABC fire extinguisher, that's actually 20 pounds of chemical, not 10.
That's correct.
Okay, so what type of application would you want to have a larger fire extinguisher versus a smaller fire extinguisher?
In a garage type situation, or any time that you're going to have more of a larger fire load, that's going to be exposed. It'd be a nice fire extinguisher to have in a garage if you're doing any cutting or welding or anything like that.
Okay, so typical home, in your ready kit or your go kit, a 10-pound. Now, do they make smaller ones?
Would be ideal. Yes, they do. They make 3 to 5 pound is very common, and a go type kit would be very effective.
Okay, so that's maybe what we'd want to be concerned with. We also, obviously, we want to take into consideration what you're dealing with in your home. I guess the ABC is the most effective because those are what most of your home materials are.
Absolutely, and with that, and grease fires are very common inside of a house, and that is what you want to use on that, where water could really get you in trouble.
Okay, and then that's spreading the fire by spraying the grease around.
Correct.
Are there any other types of fire extinguishers out there?
Yes, there are. Halon was very prominent years ago, but with the damage that it does to the atmosphere, you see those fading out. And they do have some replacement chemicals for them, but they're much more expensive and usually specialized for sensitive electronic equipment and types like that.
Okay, and sometimes we, like you say, in IT departments, you have Halon fire extinguishers. Now, what do they do different?
Halon actually removes the oxygen from the fire triangle or fire tetrahedron. It removes the oxygen from that side and extinguishes the fire by removing the oxygen itself.
Now, fire tetrahedron, that's a technical term. You want to tell me what that is?
Sure. Fire triangle or fire tetrahedron is just what breaks down into a fire. You must have fuel, you must have oxygen, you must have heat, or a chemical chain reaction, which makes the tetrahedron. If you remove any one of those objects, the fire will be extinguished.
Okay, so that's the purpose. What these fire extinguishers do, they either remove the heat, remove the combustible material itself, or remove the oxygen to stop the burning.
That is correct.
Okay, good. Well, we'll get Lieutenant Catino to give us a demonstration on the use of these fire extinguishers and see how well they're effective. Okay, Chief, we've got a fire started here, so why don't you walk me through the process?
Lieutenant John Catino here will demonstrate the pass method. He'll pull the pin, aim, squeeze the trigger, and put the fire out. This is the ABC dry chemical extinguisher.
Now, you said something about shooting the extinguisher at the base of the fire. What's the purpose of that?
That is correct. You're not wanting to spray it at the flames, which is a common tendency to do. You actually want to spray at the base of the fire, which will put it out.
I see that. I mean, he's used quite a bit of chemical. Is he going to use all 10 pounds here?
Probably not. He left the flare in there, but he'll it's out at this point.
Now, that extinguished that pretty well and fairly quickly. Are you going to have the same kind of result with water, a water extinguisher or CO2?
No, a water extinguisher on that type of thing would splash that liquid around. That was a liquid type fire, but a dry chemical will put out a liquid type fire very quickly like that. CO2 would be fairly effective on it. Water would be very less effective.
Now, if obviously, is this like a grease fire then on the
Correct.
stove? You wouldn't want to use water.
Correct. This would simulate a grease pan fire on a stove, and a shot from the dry chemical will put it out.
Okay, Chief, so we're going to try to put this chemical fire out with water, and just like a grease fire in the kitchen.
Correct.
Tell me what's happening here.
This is what would happen if you tried to use water on a grease fire. It would actually intensify it and spread it.
Okay, so this is like a grease fire in your kitchen.
Correct. at this time you would be in trouble. It's spreading it all over the place.
So just spreading the grease around, and it's going to
Correct.
continue to burn. That water's not going to do anything with that.
Right, it'll just spread the liquid around that burns.
Okay, so he's got something like a grease fire going on here. We're going to switch to a different, more appropriate fire extinguisher. What's this?
Correct. He's going to use a carbon dioxide or CO2 fire extinguisher at this time, and it will be much more effective. As you can see, it does a much better job.
Sure, and I see what you're talking about with the power of the pressure of the CO2. Now,
Correct.
Is that taking the oxygen away, or how is that working?
The carbon dioxide extinguisher works by cooling. It takes the heat away.
And then that's rechargeable also.
Correct. The carbon dioxide are refillable.
Okay. So this example here would be a liquid fire of what, A, B, or C type?
This would be a B-type fire.
A B-type fire, and you would not want to use a water extinguisher or water on a B-type fire.
Yeah, never throw water on it. It will just create more fire and could potentially harm you.
Okay, Chief, I just want to say thank you again for your help today explaining the use of fire extinguishers. Do you have any suggestions on a fire extinguisher purchase for the home?
Yes, I do. A 5 to 10 pound ABC dry chemical extinguisher is ideal for home use, and everyone should have one within easy reach and know where it's at.
So we talk in emergency management a good bit about having a safety plan or a ready or go kit, and you would always want to have a fire extinguisher in there. So that would be an appropriate purchase for your ready kit for home emergencies?
Absolutely, and know how to use it and know where it's at.
Okay, is there some place that someone can go to get training for a fire extinguisher?
Yes, we put on classes here throughout the year, and you can contact any of your local fire departments and they'd be glad to set that up for you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I appreciate your time. And for the Delaware County Emergency Management Agency, I'm Jason Rogers.